What happened to Fire Force Online? Now, Fire Force Online is or was the first Roblox Anime Fire Force game that I've seen come out on the platform, and when it came out it did surprisingly well. It was averaging around 10 to 20,000 players, and the game was genuinely somewhat entertaining. But over the course of a couple of weeks, the game's numbers started to slowly die down, and today the game's numbers is looking like this, and that's genuinely upsetting. What happened to Fire Force Online, and why did the game die out? We're going to be covering that today, but before we get into this, you guys do me a huge favor, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'm gonna see you guys in the video. Now let's talk about one of the main things. The combat. The combat wasn't actually bad. It really wasn't. It just needed to be better. It needed some tweaking, some polishing, maybe even a slight little revamp. In my opinion, the combat at times, a lot of the times, was quite stiff. And what I mean by stiff is sometimes you will do a move, or you'll do a crit, or even try to do like the air engage, and it will be, what other word can I put it than stiff? Sometimes even blocking, trying to dodge attacks, countering could be quite annoying because again, the combat could be stiff. The combat wasn't bad though, it was genuinely entertaining, especially that first week of the game. Getting into it, the combat wasn't bad, especially paired with the interesting abilities that the games had within its mechanics. I honestly think the combat was decent. I wouldn't give it above probably a 6 out of 10. I would give it a 6 out of 10. Genuinely, there was room for improvement. A lot of people couldn't get past that stiffness, that wonkiness of the combat, and it really did put a lot of people off. Now, the main issue with something like that, outside of doing missions, the main thing you're going to be doing in this game is PvP. And if you didn't like the game's combat system, the PvP as a whole, you wouldn't really enjoy the game in general, because PvP, the combat system, is genuinely the main foundations of the game. Contributed to be another factor as to why this game fell off. But before we move on to the next factor, I really do want to give the game credit where it's due. The game actually had a good amount of build variety that was entertaining. You had Generation 1 that couldn't manipulate fire, Generation 2 and Generation 3 that had full control of fire. And I'm not going to lie to you, each generation was fun to use in their different ways, shapes and forms. And not a lot of games can pull that off. Even Generation 1 that couldn't use fire ended up being really fun to use, and sometimes even OP, because Axe and Gun was really good. Again, a lot of people that were able to get over the combat stiffness actually liked it. And I'm not gonna lie, I did kind of like the PvP too. Sometimes it just annoyed me. Progression. Now, the progression in the game wasn't terrible, but after you get into your faction, it's honestly the same thing over and over again. You have to keep doing missions from your mobile phone. Now, there were other variations to missions, such as elite missions. However, nobody ever does those, so you're genuinely stuck doing normal missions over and over again. Now, the issue with that is that after a while, normal missions started to give you less and less EXP, so it became slower and slower to progress. That is really unfortunate because it really just got tedious and boring. Whereas at the start of the game, when you're trying to get into your faction, and even before that, there was much more options and there was much more variation. It's unfortunate to see that the progression honestly didn't hold any sort of variation after getting to your faction. And I honestly do think this is a problem with not only Fire Force Online, but a lot of other games. After thinking of your core game mechanics such as combat, there needs to be more to gameplay than just repeating the same missions over and over. Now, this one is kind of important too, I'm not gonna lie to you. Obtainable items. Items you obtained through just playing the game, beating bosses, beating up different enemies, and things of that nature. I'm not gonna lie, this game did not have a variety of drops, weapons, droppable clothing that helped improve your character, etc. Outside of 2 or 3 scarves and masks, you genuinely didn't have anything to look forward to customizing your character with and getting better gear to make sure your character is stronger. There wasn't really any incentive to to help you want to stay in the game longer than you had to. There was nothing to grind for. Most players do like droppable items that give good stats, whether they're drippy coats or accessories, etc. Even to weapons, there wasn't a lot of different weapon variety. There weren't even droppable weapons that I can remember. I don't think there were. On top of that, things like weapon enchants, item enchants, clothing enchants, none of those were a real thing in the game. Again, there wasn't much to grind for. There wasn't much incentive outside of the PvP. Once you finish the progression, once you beat Show a million times, there wasn't actually anything to do. All of that excluding augments. Augments were really rare items or really rare artifacts that you could grind for within the game that gave your character a significant boost. And I might have to take off the word significant from that. Now, augments were a 0.5 drop percentage chance. Significantly really rare, hard to get, and the best way you were going to get that was through grinding Show. Now, these augments have a chance of being different things, and each of them have different ability. For example, the one I had gave lifesteal. Now, the lifesteal augment was not easy to get. You kind of have to slave away at it or just have extremely high luck. However, getting these augments was genuinely underwhelming, or at least the augment I
build 2. I was on it yesterday and I was on it today. Lifesteal is infinitely worse than this bitch. I'm telling you, lifesteal is shit compared to the stamina back build. Oh god, Loki healer seal needs a buff. Yeah, people have been saying that. AGZ has that bitch too. Like, look.
The lifesteal augment barely gave any lifesteal. During single hit moves, barely anything. During multi-hit moves, barely any health regen. And that was super demotivating. It was discouraging. Imagine spending hours, days, if not weeks grinding for an augment just for it to actually end up damn near doing nothing. It made no gameplay difference to my character having the lifesteal augment. I can't say the same for every other augment because some augments were pretty useful. For some reason, the mana steal augment gave a lot of mana back, like a lot of mana back. And you could pair that with becoming a healer in order to consistently get heals because your mana was going to come back. Again, super underwhelming, especially from the lifesteal perspective, because you got your 0.5% drop chance item and it ended up being R. Now, I'm not saying this contributed directly towards the death of, and the game isn't actually dead. It still has a decent amount of players. Me personally, I quit. I could not use that character anymore because it was super underwhelming to use that character, and it put me off having grinded that character for days just for it to end up being trapped. But you guys do me a huge favor and let me know what your opinion is. Why do you think this game fell off? What was your opinion of the game? I would love for you guys to give detailed paragraphs or sentences as to why you stopped playing Fire Force Online. That's it from me. I love y'all boys. Appreciate every single one of you guys. If you made it to the end, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'm gonna see you in the next one.